All right, well, the next thing I hear is that, well, okay, yes, Barrett's is a risk factor for cancer, but from what I read on the internet, it rarely goes to cancer. This isn't something you need to worry about. 30 years with Barrett's and mine hasn't progressed. In fact, what I read on the internet was that the risk of it is really only 0.5% chance per year. Well, admittedly, that I guess doesn't sound that bad, but at the end of 10 years, I've still got a 5% chance of having esophageal cancer, which doesn't sound all that good to me. And then so I asked them, well, where did you get this information? Well, I got it from this article here, Sharma, Dysplasia and Cancer in a Large, sounded very authoritative. And I said, well, I know that article. You look at that article, and the other thing they mention is the fact that Barrett's can go on to high-grade dysplasia at a rate of 0.9% per year. Well, like I've already told you, high-grade dysplasia is really carcinoma in situ. This is cancer. If it's not cancer right now, it's going to be cancer. So let me help you with the advanced math. 0.5 plus 0.9 is 1.4% chance per year. So now at the end of that 10-year period, now all of a sudden I've got a 14% chance of having cancer. To me that's not small. That's not a small risk. This is a real risk that I think somebody needs to be worried about. In fact, if you look at the diagram from his article, from Sharma's publication, what he did is he took 1,400 patients that had just been recently diagnosed with Barrett's. Unfortunately, almost 7% already had cancer at the time of diagnosis. Another 3% had high-grade dysplasia. So to me, 10% already out of the gate already had cancer when they were told they had Barrett's. Another 7% had low-grade dysplasia. Well, what he did was then he took the remaining 1,100 and had them follow up, or tried to have them follow up every 4 years. 600 of them were agreeable. So this was a big study. Took 600 patients that were willing to come back every year to have an endoscopy to see what was happening with their Barrett's. And what he found was that 2% of them went on to cancer during that 4-year period. That's where the 0.5% chance per year comes from. Another 3.6% went on to high-grade dysplasia. That's where the 0.9% per year comes from. Another 16% went on to low-grade dysplasia. If you put that all together, what that translates into is 5% progression per year. That's not small. It's not rare for Barrett's to progress. It's bordering on common. And it's one of those elephant in the room type of discussions. I mean, I think we all know it. I think we know that Barrett's is a risk factor in a precancerous lesion, but we choose to ignore it. If we ignore it, maybe it's gonna go away. And so that's really kind of how we manage Barrett's, by ignoring it, or what we call watch and wait. So if you today are diagnosed with Barrett's, what you're going to be told, almost certainly, is, well, it's really not anything to worry about. It's rare that it progresses, but you should come back and see me maybe 1 to 3 years. Well, odds are you won't come back to see me in 1 to 3 years. In fact, less than 50% do. But if you do, you may be the one that progresses to low-grade dysplasia. But even when you progress to low-grade dysplasia, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be told, well, it's very low risk that this would ever turn into anything serious. I don't want you to get worried. The risk is low. Why don't you just come back to see me in another 6 to 12 months? We'll do another endoscopy. We'll check it out. Again, half the people probably won't come back, but if they do, now they're found to have high-grade dysplasia. To me, that is already cancer, and it either means esophagectomy or some other form of treatment. There are some centers, believe it or not, where you'll be told to come back in 3 months. Not anything to worry about. We'll just watch this for now. And then we watch it, and lo and behold, you develop esophageal cancer. And now your options are either palliative care, we can pack your things, get your things in order, or esophagectomy, which is a ginormous operation. And so to me, the risk of this watch and wait mentality is this. It's esophagectomy. It's the development of esophageal cancer and having your esophagus removed. This is a 6 to 8 hour surgery. This is 2 weeks in the hospital. This is major surgery. Right now, esophageal cancer is the 6th most common cause of cancer death worldwide. It's estimated that there's going to be at least 20,000 new cases of esophageal cancer here in the United States alone. And we've seen a dramatic rise in the incidence of this cancer in the last 25 years. In fact, it's been so dramatic and even at epidemic proportions that the National Cancer Institute looked at this, and they compared it to all other cancers out there. And so on the screen right now is this graphic of the time trend of cancers. So they looked at everything from colorectal cancer to lung cancer to breast cancer to prostate and melanoma. And largely, most of them were a flat line over the last 25 to 30 years, with the exception of a little rise in prostate cancer and a little rise in melanoma. But the pink curve right here is esophageal cancer over this period. And over this 25 to 30 year period, we've seen a 600% increase in this type of cancer. It's the fastest rising cancer of any cancer out there. And yet it doesn't get any media attention. You don't hear about it on the news. You'd be lucky if your physician even discusses it with you. But yet, it's the fastest rising cancer of any cancer out there. And it's really just a progression of GERD. That's as simple as that. It starts with the chronic injury, meaning it starts with reflux and reflux damage to your esophagus. Over time, that continued reflux leads to Barrett's in some patients. Over time, ongoing reflux is then going to lead to low-grade dysplasia, high-grade dysplasia, and eventually on to cancer. And the way we're managing it is just with a watch and wait mentality. We just sit here and we watch and we wait for you to progress down this pathway. So I thought to myself, there's got to be something different here. There's something different about this cancer or this organ than other organ systems. I'm the one that's off here. So I decided to take a step back and look and compare it to something else. So I figured, well, the colon, it's a tube, other end of the body, one piece of plumbing. Let's see how similar they are. So what I want to do is just compare esophagus to colon. So what I found in my little investigation was a lot more deaths with colon cancer, a little more prevalent. So there's about 52,000 deaths per year from colon cancer. As of 2007, when I put this data together, it was only about 14,000 esophageal cancer deaths. It's now up to probably about 20,000. Interestingly enough, what I found was that the precancerous lesion associated with colon cancer was the colon polyp. And believe it or not, the risk of a colon polyp progressing to colon cancer is 0.5% chance per year. Well, I already showed you that the risk of Barrett's progressing is at least 0.5%. By my calculations, is upwards near a 1.5% chance per year. For colon cancer, we do screening. Everybody gets a colonoscopy at age 50. If you've got polyps and you've got to have them taken out, you've got to come back to have more taken out. So we do great screening. We do a lot of surveillance, and the management is to remove the polyps. Unfortunately, for esophageal cancer, we don't do any screening. You'll be lucky if anybody ever recommends you should have an endoscopy because of your reflux symptoms. We do very poor surveillance. You may be told to come back in 1 to 3 years, but odds are you're going to forget. And our real management strategy with Barrett's and esophageal cancer is to watch and wait. Well, then I thought to myself, well, screening must not make a difference. Screening and surveillance. We do all that work for colon stuff, and it probably doesn't matter worth a hill of beans. Well, right about that same time, this article came out that answered and looked at that very question. It wanted to see if there was any protection from colorectal cancer from having your screening and surveillance colonoscopies. And so they took a huge number of patients, thousands of patients, and put them into 2 basic arms. One group of patients got their screening colonoscopy, their surveillance colonoscopy religiously. The other group said, not doing that, don't need it, don't want it, no thanks, and didn't have it done. And so what this study wanted to look at was, are we preventing colon cancer by taking out the colon polyps? Simple as that. They weren't looking to see if they picked up colon cancer earlier or made it more curable. They wanted to see if they were actually preventing cancer. And what they found is the patients that got their screening colonoscopy and surveillance colonoscopy and polyps removed had a 77% lower incidence of colon cancer. We were impacting this cancer. We were preventing colon cancer by just simply taking out the precancerous lesion. Why do we manage these two differently? For the colon, the risk of the polyp is a 0.5% chance per year. We do screening, we do surveillance, we take out all the polyps, and we impacted the cancer, decreased colon cancer by 77%. For the esophagus, the risk of Barrett's progressing is at least 0.5%, probably closer to 1.4%. We do no screening, we do poor surveillance, and we have sat here and watched and wait as esophageal cancer has increased by 600%. And why? The old answer would be, well, we don't really have a good way of taking out Barrett's. It's very cumbersome. You know, we had this PDT or photodynamic therapy, and patients had to hide in a closet because they couldn't be exposed to sunlight, and it didn't work well. So we just really can't do it. Well, that's not entirely true. About 5-6 years ago, a couple of different technologies came out in regards to ablation. One of which used radio frequency energy, another used cryotherapy or liquid nitrogen. Both procedures were able to actually burn away selectively the Barrett's in a very short endoscopic procedure and eliminate Barrett's in the majority of patients. Using either of these two technology, the eradication rate of Barrett's or dysplastic Barrett's has been upwards of 90%. So that excuse that we don't have a procedure to actually remove the Barrett's is ludicrous. We do, and it's a very safe, either one of these is a very safe procedure. In fact, most would say it's safer than taking out a colon polyp, yet we don't routinely do it for patients with Barrett's. And to me, again, this is really just that head in the sand mentality. I mean, we know this is a problem, and we bury our head in the sand and hope it goes away. But it's not going away. It's increasing at epidemic proportions. Again, Barrett's is a precancerous lesion, and we got to recognize that and start treating it as such.